The ship was dying. Everyone on board knew it. They could hear it in the groaning of metal walls. They could feel it in the cold air that grew colder with each passing hour. They could see it in the flickering lights that sometimes went dark for minutes at a time. Rilan pressed her hand against the frozen wall of the corridor and felt the ship shiver beneath her touch. 3 days ago, this vessel had been full of hope. 3 days ago, 37 Valari refugees had believed they were sailing toward freedom. Now they were sailing toward death, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. She was young for a navigator, barely past her 30th cycle. Her pale blue skin had turned gray from exhaustion and fear. Her large, dark eyes, which once held such brightness, now looked empty and tired. She had not slept since the attack. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the pirate ships tearing through their hull. She heard the screams of those who died in the first strike. The pirates had come without warning. They had ripped through the transport ship like wolves through a wounded animal. They took everything of value and left the survivors to float in the void. No food. No medical supplies. Barely any power. Just enough life support to let them die slowly, instead of quickly. Rilan walked through the damaged corridors toward the central gathering room. The emergency lights cast long shadows on the walls. She stepped over broken panels and twisted metal. The smell of burned circuits filled her nose. It was the smell of a ship that would never fly again. When she reached the gathering room, she found the other survivors huddled together for warmth. Most of them were too weak to stand. Some of them were injured, their wounds wrapped in torn clothing because there were no bandages left. In the corner, a small child named Kes sat alone, clutching a torn blanket. The child had not spoken since the attack. Her parents had been killed in the first explosion. Elder Tovik stood at the center of the room. He was old, nearly 400 cycles, and his blue skin had faded to almost white with age. He had been a teacher once, a philosopher who asked too many questions about the Valari government. That was why he was on this ship. That was why they were all on this ship. They were the unwanted ones, the troublemakers, the ones who dared to think differently. Tovik raised his thin hands, and the room fell silent. His voice was weak, but everyone listened. They had no choice. He was the only leader they had left. "I must tell you something," Tovik said. "Something I should have told you when we first sent our distress signal. I was afraid to speak the truth. I thought hope might help us survive longer. But hope built on lies is no hope at all." Rilan felt her stomach tighten. She knew what was coming. She had suspected it for 2 days now. "The collective knows we are here," Tovik continued. "They received our signal. I confirmed it through our communication logs before the system died completely. They know exactly where we are. They know we are dying." A murmur spread through the room. Some people looked confused. Others looked angry. A few just looked sad, as if they already understood. "They are not coming," Tovik said. His voice cracked. "We were never meant to arrive at our destination. This transport was sent into deep space on purpose. The pirates were not an accident. They were allowed to find us. Perhaps they were even told where to look." A woman near the back began to cry. A man shouted in anger, demanding to know why. Tovik waited for the noise to quiet before he continued. "We are political problems," he said simply. "We asked questions. We challenged ideas. We wanted change. The collective does not punish such people openly anymore. It is bad for their image among other species, so instead, they send us away. They put us on ships that never arrive. They let the void do their work for them." Quote, Rilan felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had suspected this truth, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that hurt deep in her chest. Her own government had sent her to die. Not because she was dangerous, not because she had committed any crime, simply because she had dared to think for herself. "Our distress beacon has been broadcasting for 3 days, Tovik said. "We are in the dead zone between 2 star systems. No patrol ships come here. No trade routes pass through. Even if some other species heard our signal, why would they come? We have nothing to offer. We are strangers to them. In this galaxy, no one helps without expecting something in return. That is the way of things. That has always been the way. The room fell into complete silence. Even the crying woman had stopped. There was nothing left to say. They were abandoned. They were forgotten. They were already dead, just waiting for their bodies to catch up with the truth. Rilan stood still for a long moment, feeling the weight of despair pressing down on her shoulders. Then something inside her refused to accept it. She did not know where this feeling came from. Perhaps it was stubbornness. Perhaps it was youth. Perhaps it was simply the refusal to die without trying everything possible first. She turned and walked out of the gathering room without saying a word. Her feet carried her through the broken corridors toward the communication center. The room was half destroyed, filled with sparking wires and shattered screens, but the distress beacon was still working, barely. It sent out a weak signal that probably reached no one. Rilan began to work. Her hands moved across the damaged controls. She rerouted power from systems they no longer needed. She pulled energy from the last functioning lights in empty sections of the ship. She pushed the beacon beyond its safe limits, not caring if it burned out completely. If they were going to die anyway, she would make sure their final cry was as loud as possible. The work took hours. Her fingers bled from the sharp edges of broken equipment. Her vision blurred from exhaustion. But she kept going. She kept pushing. She kept refusing to surrender. When she finally finished, the beacon was broadcasting at 3 times its normal strength. It would burn out within hours. But for those few hours, their signal would reach farther than ever before. It would reach into the deep void where no one traveled. It would touch the empty darkness between stars. Rilan collapsed against the wall, too tired to move. She looked up at the ceiling and whispered words she had not spoken since childhood. Words her grandmother had taught her. A prayer to the universe, to whatever forces might exist beyond understanding. If anyone can hear us, she whispered, please come, please help. We do not want to die alone in the dark. The silence that followed was absolute. The ship groaned around her. The cold crept deeper into her bones. She closed her eyes and waited for nothing. Then the ship shook. Rilan opened her eyes. At first, she thought something had broken. Another system failing. Another step toward death. But then she heard shouting from the gathering room. Not screams of fear, something different. Something that sounded almost like excitement. She forced herself to stand and stumbled through the corridors. When she reached the gathering room, everyone was pressed against the one remaining window that still had power. They were pointing at something outside. Rilan pushed through the crowd until she could see. What she saw made her heart stop. A ship had appeared from nowhere. It hung in the void like a silver ghost, its hull gleaming in the distant starlight. It was not a Valari ship. It did not match any design she recognized. No collective markings, no Dominion symbols. Nothing she had ever seen in any database. What is it? Someone whispered. Elder Tovik moved closer to the window. His old eyes studied the strange vessel for a long moment. Then his face went pale with shock. That configuration, he said slowly. Those engine signatures. I have seen them only in reports. Old reports, from First Contact archives. What species? Rilan asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Tovik turned to look at her. His expression was a mixture of fear, confusion, and something else she could not identify. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just disbelief. Human, he said. That is a human ship. The word spread through the room like fire. Human. The young species. The newcomers who had appeared among the stars barely a century ago. The ones that other species called primitive, reckless, unpredictable. The ones that no one really understood, and for reasons that made no sense at all. They had come to answer the call of dying strangers in the darkest corner of space. Captain Tay stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and stared at the broken ship on his view screen. It looked like something had chewed it up and spit it out. Hull breaches in at least 4 sections. Engine systems completely dead. Life support failing. By all logic, everyone on board should already be dead. But the sensors showed life signs. 37 of them. Weak, fading, but still there. Tay was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples that made him look older than his 42 years. He had been flying cargo ships through deep space for almost 2 decades. He had seen a lot of strange things, but finding a dying alien ship in the middle of nowhere was a new experience even for him. "Captain," Lieutenant Yuna said from her station. Her voice was tense. "I need to say something." "Speak." "That ship is Valari." I checked the design against our database. The Valari Collective has no treaties with Earth. No diplomatic relations at all. They consider us primitive. They have refused every attempt at communication we have made for 50 years. I know. This could be a trap. Pirates use distress signals as bait sometimes. We are months away from any support. If something goes wrong out here, no one is coming to help us. Tay nodded slowly. Everything Yuna said was true. Standard protocol was clear about situations like this. Do not engage with unknown vessels. Do not risk your crew for strangers. Report the signal and let someone else handle it. But Tay had never been very good at following standard protocol. "Woo," he said, turning to his chief engineer. "How long to dock with that ship?" Engineer Wu looked up from his console. He was a short man, with thick arms, and grease permanently under his fingernails. He had been keeping the Horizon's Edge running for 15 years, often with nothing but spare parts and creative cursing. 20 minutes if we do it careful, Wu said. 10. If we do it stupid. Do it careful, but fast. Yuna stood from her station. Captain, are you sure about this? We do not know what is on that ship. We do not know why they are here. We do not know anything. Tay turned to face her. His expression was calm but firm. We know that people are dying. We know that we can help. That is enough. They are not our people. They are not even our species. They are people. That makes them our business. Yuna looked like she wanted to argue more. But something in Tay's eyes stopped her. She had served under him for 5 years. She knew that when he made a decision like this, nothing would change his mind. Yes, Captain, she said quietly. Tay turned to the last member of his bridge crew. Doctor. Hana sat at a small station in the corner, already preparing medical supplies. She was the ship's doctor, a woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and steady hands. Before joining the Horizon's Edge, she had spent 10 years working in frontier colonies, treating everything from mining accidents to alien diseases. Hana, what do we know about Valari biology? Enough, she said. Carbon-based. Similar enough to human biology that our basic treatments should work. They breathe oxygen, which helps. Their blood is different from ours, but I can work around that. The main concern will be hypothermia and oxygen deprivation. From what the sensors show, that ship has been losing heat and air for days. Can you save them? Hana looked up from her work and met his eyes. I can try. That is all anyone can do. 20 minutes later, the Horizon's Edge was locked against the Valari ship. The docking process was delicate work. The alien vessel was so damaged that Wu had to compensate for several hull breaches just to make a seal, but he managed it. Because Wu always managed it somehow. Tay, Hana, and 2 security officers stood at the airlock. The captain had considered sending the security officers through first, but Hana had argued against it. If the Valari saw armed soldiers, they might panic. They might think the humans were pirates coming to finish what the first attack had started. I go first, Hana said. Alone, Tay frowned. That is not safe. None of this is safe. But if we want them to trust us, we need to show them we are not a threat. 1 woman with medical supplies is less frightening than 4 people with weapons. Tay did not like it, but he understood the logic. He nodded once and stepped back. The airlock opened with a hiss. Cold air rushed out from the Valari ship, carrying the smell of fear and desperation. Hana stepped through the threshold and walked into darkness. The corridor was barely lit by emergency lights that flickered like dying stars. Hana moved slowly, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She kept her hands visible, and her movements calm. In her right hand, she carried a translator device. In her left, she held a medical kit. She found them in a large room at the center of the ship. 37 Valari. Huddled together like frightened animals. Some lay on the floor, too weak to stand. Others sat against the walls, their large, dark eyes watching her with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Hana stopped at the entrance and raised her hands. She activated the translator and spoke slowly and clearly. "My name is Hana. I am a doctor. I am here to help you." No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared at her as if she were a ghost. A young Valari woman stepped forward from the crowd. Her blue skin was pale and her hands were shaking. But there was something strong in her eyes, something that had not been broken by everything she had been through. "You are human," the woman said. Her voice came through the translator with a slight delay. "Yes. Why are you here?" "There is nothing in this part of space. No trade routes. No stations. Nothing." Hana lowered her hands slowly. "We were passing through on a long journey. We heard your distress signal. That is impossible. Our signal was weak. It should not have reached anyone. It reached us." The young woman shook her head as if trying to clear confusion from her mind. "I do not understand. We have nothing to offer you. We have no money, no technology, no information. We are refugees, criminals, according to our government. Why would you come for us?" Hana felt her heart tighten at the question. She looked around the room at the wounded, the sick, the dying. She saw a child in the corner, small and alone, clutching a torn blanket. She saw old ones who had given up hope. She saw young ones who had never known anything but fear. "You called for help," Hana said. The words came out simple and plain. "We heard you. We came. But why? What do you want from us?" Hana did not know how to answer that question. She did not understand why it was being asked. In her mind, the answer was so obvious that it did not need to be spoken. People were dying. She could help, therefore, she would help. What other reason could there possibly be? "I want nothing from you," she said finally. "I only want to help you live." She did not wait for a response. She walked into the room and knelt beside the nearest injured Valari. The man had a deep wound on his side, poorly bandaged with torn clothing. The cloth was soaked with dark blue blood. Without proper treatment, he would die within hours. Hana opened her medical kit and began to work. Her hands moved with practiced skill, cleaning the wound, applying medicine, wrapping it in proper bandages. The Valari man watched her with wide eyes, too shocked to speak. Other humans appeared at the door. Tay entered first, followed by the security officers. They carried more supplies, more equipment. They spread out through the room and began helping the wounded without waiting for permission or thanks. Rilan watched all of this from across the room. She had been the one to boost the distress signal. She had been the one to pray to the universe for help. And now, help had come. In a form she never expected. She watched the human doctor treat wound after wound. She watched the human captain direct his people with calm authority. She watched the human soldiers, who carried weapons but used their hands only to lift fallen bodies and distribute blankets. An old man appeared beside her. Elder Tovik, the leader of their group. His ancient face was wet with tears. "I do not understand them," he whispered. "In 400 years of life, I have never seen anything like this. Every species in the galaxy operates on trade, on exchange, on benefit. Nothing is free, nothing is ever free. Why are they doing this?" Rilan shook her head. She had no answer. Across the room, the human doctor had finished with the wounded man and moved to the next patient. As she worked, she noticed the small child in the corner. Kes, the orphan, still sat alone with her torn blanket. Hana stood and walked over to her slowly. The child looked up with empty eyes. She had not spoken since her parents died. She had not cried. She had not done anything except sit and wait for the end. Hana knelt down in front of her. She did not speak. She did not try to treat her like a patient. She simply reached out and took the child's small hand in her own. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the child leaned forward. She pressed her face against Hana's shoulder, and for the first time in 3 days, she cried. Hana held her and let her weep. She did not say that everything would be okay. She did not make promises she could not keep. She simply held a broken child and let her feel less alone. Rilan watched this scene and felt something crack inside her chest. It was not pain. It was something else. Something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. These strange humans, these primitive newcomers that her government dismissed as unimportant, had traveled through empty space to save strangers. They had risked their lives for people they had never met. They had offered help without asking for anything in return. Perhaps the universe was not as cold as she had believed. Perhaps, somewhere in the darkness between stars, there were still people who cared about other people simply because caring was the right thing to do. Captain Tay walked over to Rilan and Tovik. His face was tired but kind. "We need to move everyone to our ship," he said through his translator. "This vessel will not last much longer. We do not have much space, but we will make room." Tovik looked at him with wet eyes. "We do not know how to repay you." Tay seemed confused by the statement. "There is nothing to repay. You needed help. We helped. That is all." He walked away to organize the evacuation, leaving 2 confused Valari behind. Rilan and Tovik looked at each other. Neither of them had words for what they were feeling, but for the first time in 3 days, they both believed they might survive. The Horizon's Edge was never designed to carry this many passengers. It was a cargo ship, built for moving supplies between distant colonies. It had room for a crew of 12 and enough storage space for several thousand tons of equipment. It was not built for refugees, but somehow, they made it work. Engineer Wu walked through the cargo hold, watching his crew convert storage spaces into living quarters. They removed crates of machinery and trade goods, pushing them into corners and stacking them against walls. They laid down blankets and padding on the cold metal floor. They set up portable heaters and air circulation systems. It was not comfortable, but it was warm and safe. 37 Valari now lived in what used to be a storage bay. They sat in small groups, speaking quietly to each other. Some slept for the first time in days, finally feeling secure enough to close their eyes. Others ate the simple food that the human crew provided, meals designed for different biology but still nourishing enough to keep them alive. Wu stopped beside a power conduit and checked the readings on his portable scanner. The numbers made him frown. They were using too much power, too much heat, too much air. The ship's systems were working harder than they should, and they still had a long journey ahead. Captain Tay found him there an hour later. The captain looked tired, which was unusual. Tay was normally the kind of man who seemed to have endless energy. "Report," Tay said simply. Wu did not try to soften the truth. He never did. "We have a problem. Several problems, actually." "Tell me." "Food first. We had supplies for our crew for 3 months. With 37 extra mouths, that drops to maybe 6 weeks if we ration carefully. The Valari can eat most of what we have, but they need more calories than humans. They are bigger. Their bodies burn energy faster." Tay nodded slowly. "What else?" "Water. Our recycling systems can handle the extra load, but just barely. If anything breaks, we are in trouble. Air is similar. The life support can keep everyone breathing, but it is working at maximum capacity. No room for errors. And fuel?" Wu hesitated. This was the worst part. "We burned a lot getting to the Valari ship. We will burn more getting back to human space. I ran the numbers 3 times. If everything goes perfectly, we will make it home with almost nothing left in the tanks. If anything goes wrong, if we have to change course or speed up for any reason, we might not make it at all." Tay stood in silence for a long moment. His face showed nothing, but Wu knew him well enough to see the worry behind his calm expression. "Can we contact human space? Request assistance?" "I already tried. We are too far out. Our communication systems cannot reach any relay stations. We are alone out here, Captain. Whatever happens, we handle it ourselves." Before Tay could respond, Lieutenant Yuna's voice came over the intercom. Her tone was sharp with urgency. "Captain, to the bridge. We have a situation." Tay and Wu exchanged a look, then both men hurried toward the bridge. They found Yuna, standing at her station, staring at her scanner display with an expression that Wu did not like at all. "What is it?" Tay asked. Yuna pointed at her screen. Two small dots were moving across the display, approaching from the direction of Valari space. "Two ships," Yuna said. "Valari military vessels. They will intercept us in approximately 18 hours. Tay studied the display. "How do you know they are military?" "Engine signatures, weapon profiles. These are not cargo ships or patrol boats. These are warships, small ones, but still warships." Wu felt his stomach drop. "The collective sent them." Yuna nodded. "That is my guess. The refugees told us their government abandoned them on purpose. Maybe the collective decided to make sure there are no survivors. No witnesses. No one to tell the story of what really happened." Tay turned away from the display and walked to the center of the bridge. He stood there with his back to his crew, looking out through the main view screen at the endless stars. "Options," he said quietly. Yuna answered first. "We can run. If we change course now and push our engines to maximum, we might be able to lose them in the asteroid field near the system's edge, but that would use most of our remaining fuel. We might not make it home afterward. Other options? We can hide. There are some debris clouds nearby. If we power down most of our systems, we might be able to avoid their sensors. But with this many people on board, our heat signature is too high. They would probably find us anyway." Wu spoke up. "We could transfer the refugees back to their ship, leave them behind and run. The Valari warships are not interested in us. They only want the refugees." The words hung in the air like poison. No one said anything for a long moment. Then Tay turned around and looked at Wu with disappointment in his eyes. Wu held up his hands. "I am not saying we should do it. I am just listing options. That is what you asked for. That option does not exist," Tay said firmly. "Those people are under our protection now. We do not abandon them." "Captain," Yuna said carefully, "I need to be honest with you. Those warships will destroy us. We are a cargo vessel. We have no real weapons, no shields, no military training. If they decide to attack, we will die, all of us. I know. Is that what you want? To throw away our lives for strangers?" Tay was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but certain. "When I was young, my grandmother told me a story. During one of the old wars on Earth, her village was destroyed. Everyone fled into the mountains. They had no food, no shelter, no hope. They would have died if strangers from another country had not found them and helped them. Those strangers risked their lives for people they did not know. People who spoke a different language and came from a different culture. My grandmother never forgot that kindness. She said it taught her that being human is not about blood or borders. It is about choosing to help. When helping is hard." Tay looked at each of his crew members in turn. "Those refugees out there are someone's grandchildren, someone's parents, someone's friends. If we leave them to die, we are not the people I want us to be. I would rather face those warships and lose than run away and survive as cowards." The bridge fell silent. Yuna looked down at her console. Wu stared at the floor. Neither of them argued. Finally, Wu spoke. "Well, if we are going to fight, we should probably figure out how. Because right now, the most dangerous weapon on this ship is my wrench." That broke some of the tension. Tay almost smiled. "What can you do in 18 hours? Wu scratched his chin, thinking. "The cargo hold has a lot of industrial equipment. Mining lasers, cutting torches, magnetic grapples. None of it is designed for combat, but with some creative work, I might be able to turn some of it into weapons. Nothing fancy, nothing that would scare a real warship, but maybe enough to surprise them. Do it. Use whatever you need. Wu nodded and headed for the door. Then he paused and looked back. Captain, there is one more thing. The refugees have engineers too. Good ones, from what I have heard. If we are going to modify the ship, we could use their help. Tay considered this. Ask them. Do not order them. They have been through enough. Let them choose. Down in the cargo hold, Rilan heard about the approaching warships from another refugee who had overheard the humans talking. The news spread quickly through the group. Fear returned to faces that had just begun to hope. Elder Tovik gathered everyone together and explained the situation. 2 Valari warships were coming. The humans had a choice. They could abandon the refugees and save themselves, or they could stay and fight against impossible odds. They will leave us, someone said. Why would they die for us? Rilan thought about the human doctor, Hana, holding the orphaned child. She thought about Captain Tay, speaking calmly about saving strangers simply because it was right. She thought about everything she had seen in the past day. They will not leave us, she said. Her voice was quiet but firm. How can you know that? Because they are different. I do not understand how or why, but they are different from us. Different from every other species I have ever known. An hour later, Engineer Wu came down to the cargo hold with a request. He needed help modifying the ship. He needed skilled hands and creative minds. But he made it clear that no one was required to help. This was a choice. Rilan was the first to volunteer. Then 3 other engineers joined her. Then 2 more. By the end of the hour, nearly half the refugees had offered to help in some way. Wu looked surprised. You understand what we are doing, right? We are preparing to fight your own people, your own government. Rilan met his eyes. That government left us to die. These humans chose to save us. My loyalty is clear. They worked through the night. Rilan watched the humans and Valari side by side, cutting metal and rewiring circuits. She saw Wu teaching alien engineers how human technology worked. She saw her people teaching the humans about Valari engineering tricks. They were strangers from different worlds, but they worked together as if they had known each other for years. At one point, Dr. Hana came down to the cargo hold with food and water for the workers. She stopped beside Rilan and watched the activity for a moment. Thank you for helping, Hana said. Rilan shook her head. Thank you for giving us something worth fighting for. 16 hours passed. The warships drew closer. The horizon's edge was no longer just a cargo ship. It was something new. Something angry. Something that refused to surrender. Captain Tay stood on the bridge and watched the approaching enemy on his display. His ship was held together with emergency repairs and desperate hope. His crew was exhausted. His passengers were terrified, but they were ready. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The 2 Valari warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly 18 hours after Yuna first detected them. They appeared on the scanners like dark shadows, their weapons already powered and ready. They were sleek, deadly, and built for one purpose only. Captain Tay watched them approach on his view screen. His heart was beating fast, but his face remained calm. He had learned long ago that a captain could never show fear to his crew. Fear was contagious. Calm was too. They are hailing us, Yuna said from her station. Her voice was tight with tension. Put them through. The view screen flickered, and a Valari face appeared. He was a military officer, his blue skin marked with dark lines that showed his rank. His eyes were cold and empty of any warmth. Human vessel, the officer said. I am Commander Voss of the Valari Collective Defense Force. You are carrying criminals who have been sentenced by our government. You will surrender them to us immediately. Tay stood from his captain's chair and walked closer to the screen. He kept his hands behind his back and his spine straight. Commander Voss, I am Captain Tay of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. The people on my ship have requested asylum under Earth Unified Space Law. That request has been granted. They are no longer your prisoners. They are protected persons under human authority. Voss looked amused. Earth law means nothing in Valari space. You are far from your home, human. You have no power here. We are not in Valari space. We are in neutral territory. And Earth law applies to all Earth vessels, no matter where they travel. We have not where. Earth law. Earth law. I'm some of loss paid. Earth law, a technicality. One that will not save you. Tay nodded slowly. Perhaps. But here is another technicality for you to consider. Under the same Earth law I mentioned, any attack on a vessel carrying protected persons is considered an act of war against Earth itself. Your two ships could destroy us easily, but what happens after? What happens when Earth learns that Valari warships killed human citizens to silence political prisoners? How many ships will we send? How many worlds will remember this day? Voss's expression flickered slightly. Uncertainty, perhaps, or maybe just surprise that a primitive human would dare threaten him. You are bluffing. Earth would not go to war over one cargo ship. You do not know us very well. For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension hung between them like a physical thing. Then Voss smiled. A cold and empty expression that held no humor. It does not matter. By the time anyone learns what happened here, the story will be whatever we want it to be. A tragic accident. Pirates, perhaps. A malfunction in your engines. There are so many ways for ships to die in deep space. He leaned closer to the camera. Surrender the criminals, Captain, or die with them. You have 1 hour to decide. The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. Yuna turned to face Tay. They will attack. They were always going to attack. They cannot let those refugees reach human space alive. I know. What do we do? Tay walked back to his chair and sat down. He pressed a button on his armrest, opening a ship-wide channel. This is the captain speaking. All crew and passengers, listen carefully. In less than 1 hour, we will be under attack by Valari warships. They want to kill everyone on this ship. They believe we are weak because we are not soldiers. They believe we will surrender because we have no weapons. They are wrong. He paused and looked around the bridge at his crew. Yuna at tactical, Wu at engineering, Hana at medical. All of them tired, all of them scared, all of them still standing. Humans have a long history, Tay continued. It is not always a proud history. We have done terrible things to each other over the centuries. But we have also done incredible things. We have survived wars, diseases, disasters that should have destroyed us. We have climbed out of every hole we have ever fallen into. Do you know why? He leaned forward in his chair, his voice growing stronger. Because when someone tells a human that something is impossible, something in our brain refuses to accept it. We look at the impossible and we say, "Let me try anyway." We are stubborn beyond reason. We are creative beyond logic. And we do not give up, ever. Down in the cargo hold, the refugees listened to the captain's voice coming through the speakers. They did not understand all of what he was saying. His words carried a meaning that went beyond simple translation. But they felt the emotion behind it. They felt the determination. Rilan stood among her people, watching their faces. For the first time in days, she did not see despair. She saw something else. Something that looked almost like courage. The hour passed quickly. Final preparations were made. Engineer Wu reported that his modifications were complete. The mining lasers had been mounted on external ports. The magnetic grapples had been reinforced for combat use. The cargo bay doors had been rigged to fire pieces of heavy equipment like missiles. It was crude. It was desperate. It was the best they could do. When the Valari warships began their approach, Lieutenant Yuna was ready. She had spent years flying transport ships through dangerous space. She knew how to avoid pirates and navigate asteroid fields. She had never fought a real battle before. But she understood one thing very well. In space combat, movement was everything. The first Valari ship fired a warning shot that scorched the hull of the horizon's edge. Commander Voss appeared on the view screen again. "Last chance, human. Surrender now." Tay smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had made peace with what was about to happen. "Let me tell you a story, Commander. A long time ago on Earth, There was a city called Thermopylae. A small group of soldiers faced an army of thousands. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. They held the line long enough for others to escape and rally. That small group changed history. Do you know what they said when the enemy demanded their weapons? Voss looked confused. I do not care about your primitive history. They said. Tay cut the communication. The battle began. Yuna threw the Horizon's Edge into a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible for a cargo ship. She dove and rolled, using the ship's bulk as a shield while presenting the smallest possible target. The Valari pilots were skilled, but they had trained to fight military vessels that moved in predictable patterns. They had not trained to fight a cargo ship that flew like a mad thing. The first mining laser fired, a beam of concentrated heat designed to cut through asteroid rock. It was never meant to be a weapon. But when it struck the engine section of the lead Valari ship, it carved a burning line through metal and machinery. The warship shuddered. Smoke and fire erupted from the damaged section. It did not destroy the ship, but it hurt it badly. Direct hit on their primary engines, Wu reported from engineering. They are losing speed. Keep firing. Target their weapons. The second warship moved to protect its damaged companion. It unleashed a barrage of real military weapons, shots designed to kill. The Horizon's Edge took several hits. The hull screamed as metal bent and broke. Warning lights flashed across every console. Hull breach on Deck 4, Yuna shouted. Sealing emergency doors. Casualties? Tay asked. None reported yet. Down in the cargo hold, the refugees felt every impact. The ship shook around them like a dying animal. Children cried. Adults held each other. But no one panicked. They had been told what to expect. They had been told that the humans would fight. They had chosen to believe. Rilan worked alongside Dr. Hana in a makeshift medical station, preparing for wounded. The human doctor moved with calm efficiency, giving orders and arranging supplies. She did not seem afraid at all. How can you be so calm? Rilan asked during a moment of quiet. Hana looked at her and smiled sadly. I am terrified. But terror does not help anyone. So I put it aside and do what needs to be done. That is all any of us can do. On the bridge, Wu activated the magnetic grapples. These were tools designed to move cargo and attach to asteroids for mining operations. But Wu had modified them. He launched one at the damaged warship and caught it like a fisherman catching a fish. Got them, he said, reeling them in. The warship tried to pull away, but its damaged engines could not generate enough thrust. The Horizon's Edge dragged it closer, forcing it into an awkward position where it could not fire its main weapons without hitting its own hull. The second warship tried to help, but Yuna kept the cargo ship moving, always keeping the captured vessel between them and the enemy. It was a dangerous dance, a desperate gamble that required perfect timing and incredible luck. Wu launched the cargo bay doors. Thousands of kilograms of industrial equipment flew through space like a wave of destruction. Most of it missed, but enough hit the second warship to crack its shields and damage its sensor array. They are blind, Yuna reported. Their targeting systems are down. Now, Tay ordered. The Horizon's Edge released the captured warship with a sudden jolt that sent it spinning. Before the damaged vessel could stabilize, Wu fired every mining laser at once. The beams converged on the warship's weapon systems, melting cannons and missile tubes into useless slag. The first warship was now defenseless. Its engines were crippled. Its weapons were destroyed. It drifted in space like a broken toy. The second warship still had teeth, but it was wounded and blind. Commander Voss appeared on the view screen. His composure finally cracked. His face showed rage and disbelief. This is impossible. You are a cargo ship. This cannot be happening. Tay stood before the screen with blood running from a cut on his forehead. Smoke filled the bridge behind him. His ship was falling apart around him, but he was still standing. Still fighting. Still refusing to surrender. Go home, Commander. Tell your collective what you saw today. Tell them what happens when they leave innocent people to die in our sky. Tell them that humans answer distress calls, All of them. Every single one. And we do not leave anyone behind. Voss stared at him for a long moment. Then, without another word, he cut the communication. The remaining warship turned and retreated into the darkness, leaving its crippled companion behind. The battle was over. On the bridge, no one spoke. They were too exhausted, too shocked, too relieved. They had done the impossible. They had faced warships with a cargo vessel, and survived. Down in the cargo hold, the refugees heard the news spreading. The human crew had won. The Valari military had retreated. They were safe. Rilan fell to her knees and cried. Not from sadness, from something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Joy. They were going to live. The journey home took 7 weeks. 7 weeks of careful flying through empty space. 7 weeks of rationed food and recycled water. 7 weeks of repairs, rest, and recovery. The horizon's edge moved slowly, its damaged engines working at half power, its hull held together by emergency patches and stubborn engineering. But they made it. New Busan Station appeared on the view screen like a jewel against the black canvas of space. It was a human colony on the frontier, a place where miners and traders and explorers gathered to rest before heading deeper into the unknown. It was not Earth. It was not even close to Earth. But to everyone on the horizon's edge, it looked like paradise. Captain Tay stood on the bridge and watched the station grow larger as they approached. Beside him, Lieutenant Yuna handled the controls with exhausted hands. Behind them, Engineer Wu sat slumped in a chair, his eyes barely open. None of them had slept properly in months. But none of them complained. They had brought everyone home. That was all that mattered. New Busan Control. This is the horizon's edge requesting emergency docking, Yuna said into the communication system. We have 37 Valari refugees on board requesting asylum. We also need medical assistance, hull repairs, and probably a lot of food. There was a pause. Then a voice came back, filled with confusion. Horizon's edge. Please confirm. Did you say Valari refugees? Confirmed. It is a long story. We will explain everything once we dock. Another pause. Understood. Welcome home. Horizon's edge. Emergency docking approved. Medical teams are standing by. The ship settled into dock with a gentle shudder. The sound of connecting locks echoed through the hull. Then, for the first time in 7 weeks, the engines fell silent. Tay closed his eyes and let out a long breath. They had done it. The next few hours were chaos. Medical teams rushed on board to treat the wounded. Station authorities asked questions and took statements. News crews appeared, drawn by the strange story of a cargo ship fighting Valari warships to protect refugees. Within a day, the story had spread across human space. Within a week, it had reached alien communication networks. The Valari collective denied everything. They claimed the refugees were criminals who had escaped justice. They claimed their warships had been attacked without provocation. They demanded the refugees be returned immediately. No one believed them. 37 survivors told their story to anyone who would listen. They spoke of political oppression, of ships sent into the void to disappear, of a government that killed its own people to silence dissent. Their testimony could not be silenced, no matter how hard the collective tried. Other species began to talk. The humans, they said. The young ones. The reckless ones. They answered distress calls in dead space. They fight for strangers. They refuse to abandon anyone. Perhaps these primitive newcomers were not as simple as everyone thought. 3 weeks after arriving at New Busan Station, Elder Tovik stood before the Human Colonial Council to formally request asylum for his people. He had prepared a speech. He had practiced it 100 times. He planned to explain everything his people could offer, all the skills and knowledge they would contribute to human society. But when he stood before the council, looking at the tired faces of human bureaucrats who had been working for hours, the words he had prepared seemed wrong somehow. Too transactional, too cold, too much like the way the Valari did things. I had a speech, Tovik said slowly. I was going to tell you about the scientists among us, the engineers, the teachers. I was going to explain how valuable we could be to your society, how we could repay your kindness through labor and service. He paused and looked at the council members. At their center sat a woman named Bora, the colony's chief administrator. She had kind eyes and gray hair, and a face that showed she had seen many hard things in her life. But I think that speech was wrong, Tovik continued. I think it came from a way of thinking that I am trying to unlearn. So instead, I will simply tell you the truth. My people have nowhere to go. Our government wants us dead. We are tired and scared and broken. We have nothing to offer except ourselves. If that is not enough, I understand. But I am asking anyway. Please let us stay. Please let us live. The room was silent for a moment. Then Bora leaned forward and spoke. Elder Tovik, I want to explain something to you. On Earth, a long time ago, humans created something called the Declaration of Universal Rights. It says that all people, regardless of where they come from, have the right to life, freedom, and safety. It does not say this right must be earned. It does not say it must be paid for. It simply exists. For everyone. She stood from her seat and walked around the table to stand before the old Valari. Asylum is not about what you can offer. It is about what you need. Your people need safety. We can provide it. That is all there is to discuss. Tovik felt tears running down his face. In 400 years of life, no one had ever spoken to him this way. Everything in his world had always been exchange, payment, transaction. The idea that safety could simply be given, with nothing expected in return, broke something deep inside him. And as it broke, something new began to grow in its place. The asylum was granted. All 37 refugees were given the right to stay in human space for as long as they wished. They were offered housing, education, medical care, and the chance to build new lives. Some chose to stay on New Busan Station. Others spread out to different colonies. A few even applied to join Earth's space exploration program. Rilan chose to stay on the station. She found work as a navigator for cargo ships, using her skills to help human pilots navigate unfamiliar routes. It was good work. Honest work. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. One evening, several months after arriving, she stood alone on an observation deck, watching the stars. The view was beautiful, peaceful, so different from the terror of drifting in a broken ship, waiting to die. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Captain Tay approaching. He looked different now. Rested. Healed. The cut on his forehead had become a small scar. His eyes, which had been so tired during the journey, now held a quiet contentment. I heard you got a job, he said. Navigator on a mining ship. Rilan nodded. It is good work. The crew is kind. They treat me like one of their own. Thanks for watching. The Xenu. And problem. Rilan nodded. They treat me like one of their own. Good. I am glad. They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the stars. Then Rilan spoke again. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really come for us? I have asked before, and you always give the same answer. You heard our signal, you came. But that is not a real answer. No one comes for strangers in dead space. No one risks everything for people they have never met. There must be a reason. Tay was quiet for a long time. He seemed to be thinking about how to explain something complicated in simple words. On Earth, he said finally, we have a long history. Thousands of years of wars and famines and disasters. We have done terrible things to each other. We have killed millions over religion, over land, over ideas that do not matter anymore. Sometimes I think humans have spent more time hurting each other than helping. He turned to face her. But in all that darkness, there were always moments of light. People who risked their lives to save strangers. People who stood up against evil even when it cost them everything. People who refused to look away when someone was suffering. Those people taught us that being human is not about strength or intelligence or power. It is about choice. Every day, every moment, we choose who we want to be. He looked back at the stars. I came for you because someone should have come for my grandmother's people a long time ago. And someone should have come for 1,000 other groups throughout history, but no one did. They were left to die, alone and forgotten. I cannot change the past, but I can choose, right now, to be the kind of person who answers distress calls. I can choose to make the universe a little less cold. Relan felt tears building in her eyes. She had learned many things about humans during her time among them. She had learned that they were loud and messy and sometimes foolish. She had learned that they ate strange food and told strange jokes and could not sit still for more than a few minutes at a time. But she had also learned that they carried a fire inside them. A warmth that had nothing to do with their biology and everything to do with their spirits. They refused to accept that the universe was cold and cruel. They kept trying to make it better. One choice at a time. There is a word in my language, Rilan said slowly. It does not translate well. It means something like light givers. People who make the darkness less dark. For a long time, I thought such people did not exist, that they were stories we told children to help them sleep. She looked at Tay with wet eyes. I was wrong. You are real. All of you are real. Tay smiled, the same warm smile that she had seen on the day he first rescued her. We try to be. Behind them, the door to the observation deck opened. Little Kess ran through, laughing and chasing another child from the station. Her eyes were bright now. Her smile was wide. She had not spoken for weeks after the attack, but now she never seemed to stop talking. Dr. Hana followed close behind, pretending to try to catch them. She looked up and saw Rilan and Tay, and her face broke into a grin. She has made friends, Hana said. Half the children on the station want to play with her. I think she is going to be okay. Rilan watched the child play and felt her heart swell with something she finally had a name for. A human word that she had learned during her time on the horizon's edge. A word that meant believing good things were possible, even when everything seemed lost. The word was hope, and for the first time in her life, Rilan truly understood what it meant. She looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, other ships were drifting in the darkness. Other people were calling for help. Other voices were crying out into the void, and somewhere out there, humans were listening.